Hello, everybody. Welcome. Let's get started. Tesla is up today by 4.7%, almost 5% at $345 per share. Overall markets, Dow Jones down zero point 0.3, Nasdaq up zero point 0.2, S&P 500 down zero point 0.1. So markets are flat. Tesla is up, bouncing from yesterday. Everything else is mixed. Oil stocks are lower. Nvidia is down more than 1%, and Micron is down quite a bit. In the last 5 days, Tesla's down 9%, Nvidia is up 5%, Google down 4%, Meta up 3%. Asset management firms are down quite a bit. Interesting. Blackstone down 8%, BlackRock is down 4%, KKR down 9%, Apollo is down 5%. Financial services, Visa, MasterCard are flat in the last 5 days. American Express is down 4%, PayPal down 3%, Capital One 4%. So finally, there's some weakness in financial sector in the last week. And then software application service, Salesforce is down 7%, Workday down 7%, ServiceNow down 4%, Intel is up 12%. Interesting. Other than that, healthcare is down quite a bit in the last week, except for Eli Lilly. Utilities are up, and Coca-Cola is up. Okay. Let's read the news article. And then we're going to get to inflation. Wall Street falls as hot inflation data hints at slower rate cuts. Wall Street's main indices fell on Wednesday as a hotter than anticipated inflation reading added to worries that the Fed would not cut interest rates anytime soon. While some upbeat earnings like that of CVS Health helped crimp losses. The U.S. consumer price increased by the most in nearly 1.5 years in January, reinforcing the Fed's message that it was in no rush to resume cutting interest rates amid growing uncertainty over the economy. The surge in prices offered a cautionary note to President Trump's push for tariffs on imported goods, which have been panned by economists as inflationary. The CPI report was not in a disaster, but it's not what the Fed wanted to see either, said Robert Regulareo, Chief Investment Officer at Brave Eagle Wealth Management. I think the Fed is going to do what's implied by the market. Traders are now fully pricing in just one more 25 basis point rate reduction this year. Before the data, they saw an about 40% chance of another similar size move, as per LCEG data. Fed Chair Powell also began his second day of testimony before the Congress on Wednesday, which we're going to get to. He had reiterated that the U.S. Central Bank is in no rush to cut its short-term interest rate again when he testified to the Senate Banking Committee on Tuesday. January's reading is the last inflation reading before any direct impact from Trump tariff measures, which went into effect this month. Trump's trade advisors are finalizing plan for the reciprocal tariffs on every country that charges duties on U.S. imports. The CBOE volatility index, known as the fear gauge, jumped to its highest in a week, last at 16.6 points. Most megacap and growth stocks fell, with Nvidia and Amazon sliding over 1% each. Tesla was an outlier, up 4% after falling for the last 5 sessions. There's some data that we just read on Dow. Economically sensitive Russell 2000 dropped 1.4%. Okay. All 11 sectors traded lower. Interesting. Treasury yields shot up after the inflation data, with the one on the 10-year note hitting the highest in over 2 weeks. Yeah, I mean, what's important here is that the inflation data came in much higher. There's some seasonal adjustments made to January. Of course, the weighting has changed also a little bit. Shelter is now a bigger portion of the inflation report. And, some people are saying, we saw in the last 2 years, January was hot. But I think it's a major assumption to say that's going to repeat this January. And so the Fed will be very cautious about this. I don't expect a rate hike, but I think we have this pause is going to continue for longer than people expect. Currently, the first cut is expected to come in September, and that's it. There's no other rate cuts priced into this year. So that's the problem for rate-sensitive industries like automotive and healthcare. I would not be invested in auto or any home builder stocks in 2025. CVS Health advanced 13.6% after the healthcare conglomerate beat fourth quarter profit estimates. Gilead jumped 8% as the biotech company forecast 2025 earnings above analyst estimates. Lyft dropped 7% after the ride-hailing company forecast current quarter gross bookings below estimates. So let's see what we want to talk about today. We're going to dig into the inflation data. We're going to dig into Lyft earnings. And that's a good start. Okay. Nvidia is currently down 1.2%. Crude oil down 2% at $71 per barrel. Carvana is down 2. Palantir was very volatile today, now up 3%. Very interesting. Palantir, $116 per share today. It's been there for the last couple of days now. Very high volatility going on in the stock. Tesla is up almost 5%. Pretty good volume, but yesterday was much higher volume. So we'll see where the stock goes from here. I think $100 per share is in the cards. I pinned my article at the top of your screens. Recommend reading that article. Qualcomm is down 1%. Ionic is up 3%. Bill Gates recently went on record and said, NVIDIA's CEO is probably right that this is going to take quantum computing is going to take many years, maybe decades to develop, to become material to the world. But he said there is a possibility it may happen in the next 3 to 5 years. So that's also interesting too. But it's very much a 0 to 1 problem. IonQ is worth $8 billion. The stock is up about 5 times in the last few months. Also very volatile stock. Ford is trading at 925. It was lower. It's very interesting trading pattern at Ford stock for the last few days. But yeah. Okay. Let's look at some inflation data. CPI came in 0.5% as opposed to 0.3 expected and 0.4 prior. Core CPI came in 0.4%, and if you take it out one more digit, it actually came in at 0.45%, which is much harder than expected. And it's double what it was last month. So this was way above what the markets expected was pricing in. And I think this is going to be a problem for the next month or so until we get the next inflation data for equities and bonds. We had seen 10-year Treasury yield come down all the way below 4.5%, now up about 10 basis points. And looks like it's going to stick around 4.5 to 5% for the foreseeable future until something changes here. That means new auto loan rates are going to stick around 9 to 10% for a while. So we'll see. Okay. Let's pull up the inflation report. Any questions, comments, please request to speak, and please take a moment to like and repost the space. Chris is asking why not buy BYD. I wouldn't be interested in any sort of auto manufacturers today. I think automotive market is very challenged today. Extremely. There's a lot of ample capacity. Prices and margins will be suppressed for a long time, and the bubble that we saw in Tesla stock in the last couple of years is just gone. It's not coming back. So um, it's going to deflate over the next year or two and three. My take. Trump is blaming Biden for inflation under his own presidency. Like a guy getting pulled over for speeding and telling the cop, yeah, but the last guy who drove this car was going even faster. Yeah, that's ridiculous. It's February now. It's been a couple of months, and yeah, this is a little extreme. Interest rates should be lowered, something which should go hand in hand with upcoming tariffs. Let's rock and roll, America, said Trump on True Social this morning at 7:58 a.m. Interesting. I see ACDC up here. Let's see if anybody wants to come up and chat. The man who promised to end inflation on day one now blames Biden for his failures. ACDC, what do you think about that? What do you think about the inflation report in general today?
Well, I kind of said it, yesterday that it could go up to 3, and yeah, I mean, it looks bad because now the core and the super core, whichever way you look at it, inflation is back up on the rise. The Fed, I've said it right from the beginning, the Fed cut rates for political reasons. There was no need, nothing was falling apart. They didn't need to cut rates last year, okay? And they cut the rates. They were too late in raising rates, and then they cut the rates too early, and now inflation, they never tackled the inflation problem, okay? And that's why now it's up on the rise again. And I fully agree with Trump, and this is not me being biased. I'll call him, like I will call him on the statement that he's asking Powell to cut rates again on that. But yeah, I mean, 100% this inflation is Biden's inflation. I mean, he can say that, yeah, of course, he's going to say that as a campaign promise, that I'm going to cut down inflation on day one, but that doesn't mean that inflation starts coming down. His policy initiatives are going to take time, but this is 100% Biden's inflation.
Okay. Has he done anything so far that you think will lower inflation?
So any of the biggest thing that he is doing right now, okay, is focusing on the largest crisis this country faces, and that's our debt. That's the government spending, okay? That's also part of what fueled inflation, right? And he has said this, Elon has said this, that there's going to be a pain for this. You can't just get rid of all the market excesses that were built in, and not feel any pain or not make a sacrifice for it. So yes, some of his policies, we'll see how these tariffs play out. We don't know a lot about them yet, but they could cause further inflation. But I think his long-term plans are intact, and let's see how the policies that he's kind of implemented right now or talking about right now, let's see how they play out. But he's looking at a long-term growth for long-term prosperity for the country. And yeah, there could be short-term pain, which I think will be there and should be there for us to get there.
All right, Stephen.
Hey, good morning, Iman. So just to say something to what ACDC spoke about, some people would say that inflation started right around when COVID started, had nothing to do with Biden. And furthermore, that Biden has nothing to do with the Fed policy. The Fed operates entirely independent of the government because they're doing what's best for the money, not what the president wants. So to say it's Biden inflation is just absolutely ridiculous, in my opinion.
Yeah, so this is where I'll push back at that, okay? It was 100% Biden inflation. put in, Trump did the first stimulus, okay, which was needed for a pandemic which we had never faced, the world had never seen, okay? And then they continued after it. People were getting checks sent at home and they didn't know what to do with it. People started Robinhood accounts. Robinhood took off during that time, okay? You can go on and on. And then this doesn't even include all the bills that they passed, all the trillions of government spending that came into the market. So it entirely was because of that. And as far as the Fed being political, I think the first time ever that the Fed was politicized was during this last term. You can see the proof right now. Okay, this is in front of everybody on X. Look at every single agency that was politicized. Was the last time we ever heard the Fed? I followed the Fed for 30 years. They never talked about climate change. All of a sudden now that's part of their topics. That's part of their, almost call it, mandate. So it was
I think
definitely
they
politicized.
Okay, and I mean, yeah, the Fed shouldn't maybe be speaking about that, but maybe the president shouldn't be on Twitter either. I mean, I liked it better when he wasn't on Twitter. We didn't have to worry about what he tweeted. But I mean, the payments were never needed to begin with. The payments that they were giving out at the beginning of COVID, I mean, we were already in trillions and trillions of dollars worth of debt. I mean, they didn't do anything for anybody. It was an entirely wasteful spending on Trump's part. And they did nothing to audit it either.
ACDC, what do you say to those people who say, the other countries, so the same inflation that US saw, so how is that Biden's inflation?
First of all, not every country face the same inflation. Okay, we did. Some of the European counterparts who went down the same policies faced it, but a lot of other countries did not face it. And those countries that did face it, they were able to tackle that inflation sooner. Nobody passed more measures around COVID under the pretense of COVID than the United States. Nobody handed out free money like we did.
Interesting. No one?
Yeah, show me another example.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, that was quite interesting, especially the fact that it started under the Republican presidency. Helicopter money.
I missed the question, but
Right. Well, it was started under the Republican presidency, which was in an unknown. If you look back at it, right, till March, we didn't even know what was going on with COVID. Come March, we shut down everything. I think this first stimulus check came in after that. Right after the first stimulus check, Trump wanted to reopen the economy. Okay. Trump did not want to continue with these checks.
Yeah, I agree.
Congress was in control at that time, and it wasn't up to just Trump.
Right.
And then he was fighting a re-election also.
Right.
Right. And then these people, they took over the policies and they carried it to the nth degree, basically.
Okay. So the U.S. sent economic impact payments. 3 rounds of payments were issued to eligible individuals and families. Canada had, Stephen, you have to stay on mute. Canada had emergency response benefits, CERB, provided 2,000 Canadian dollars per month for up to 28 weeks to individuals who lost income. Japan has special cash payments, one-time payment of around $930 to all residents, regardless of income. Australia, economic support payments, multiple rounds of one-off payments were made to eligible welfare recipients and pensioners. Additional JobKeeper and job seeker payments supported those who lost employment. South Korea had emergency disaster relief funds, provided payments to households with the amount varying depending on family size and region. Germany had financial aid. UK, Hong Kong, Singapore, New Zealand, Brazil, Spain, France, Italy, Austria. Yeah, I mean, a lot of countries did the same thing. I mean, but I think maybe ACDC, the argument I would make if I were, thinking that this was Biden's inflation is that U.S. leads the world about these things. Like a lot of countries look at the U.S. and kind of replicate, whether it's the financial Federal Reserve or government policies, etc. So U.S. started it, I think. I think you're right on that front. But,
and Yaman, I mean, I have friends in many different countries that I've talked to. Okay, during that whole time when we were talking about this, it was absurd. Okay, because the checks that you are referring to in all of those countries that did go out, okay, those were to the absolute people who actually needed it. That's not how it went out in the U.S. If you look at just that whole PPP fraud that happened, which they still haven't even uncovered entirely, people took people created false companies and took out hundreds of thousands of dollars in benefits for that, which have never been recovered. This
Yeah,
might
that
this
sorry, yeah, ACDC is totally right. The fraud in the PPP stuff was massive. I mean, so massive they stopped tracking it. I think. I mean, it was just so blatantly fraudulent, and that is so much money, and that is a major problem too. And I agree with ACDC on this point. I mean, it was they were just kicking out money like it was cool, and they didn't care at the time because it was COVID, and it seemed like everything was coming to an end, and that's where I was like stimulus checks, oh great, and no one really asked about it, but. I also thought the stimulus checks part of that was an advance from the tax from the person's upcoming tax return. So when they file taxes, I guess, but I might be misremembering that.
Okay.
I thought it was more of an advance though.
only the child credit was a advance. You could either get it at the end of the year when you file your taxes, or you could have got the monthly check. But all of the other ones were not advance.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Let's get back to markets. And so, do you guys? So, I mean, I really want to just kind of investigate the macro data from the light of like, what does it mean to the stock market and Tesla and other investments? Um, so, let's see. Do we all agree, ACDC and Stephen? Do we agree that inflation is still too high and has settled above 3%?
I agree on that. I think it is too high, and it basically puts, this is my macro picture right now and the way I'm looking at it. Okay, it puts Trump in a very precarious position, and it puts Powell also in a very precarious position because Trump wants growth and he wants to cut taxes, but both of those are inflationary, right? And until inflation can be tamed down, Powell is not going to cut rates no matter what Trump says or asks for.
Not only that, he wants to kick out millions of people. That's also inflationary. So tax cuts, tariffs, and kicking out the people. Um, you know, all of those policies are inflationary. And I think what I've been saying for months now is people don't realize the economy today is very different from 2018, 2019, when the Fed was struggling to bring up inflation. Today it's the other way. Steven, what do you think?
I think that question's a little bit out of my wheelhouse, sir, but what ACDC said sounds very accurate.
Um, so the median CPI today, so there's a ton of different measures of inflation, but some of them are less volatile than others. The median CPI today is at the year-over-year change is about 3.6%. Core CPI is about 3.3%. Trimmed mean is about 3.2. Core PCE is about 2.8. So all of those are half a point to a full percent above what the Fed wants it to be. So ACDC, if you're Powell, what do you do next?
I stay the course. I stay the course. I definitely don't feed the inflation any further. And I think what we have to basically come to grips with is that 2% inflation, that low inflation amount may not be there for a long time. But yet, if you get growth in the country and you get some tax relief, the consumers and the taxpayers will be able to sustain through that inflation. You just can't let it get any worse and I don't think it gets anywhere near what we went through, but that's, I think, where the norm is going to be.
Do you think the inflation is still trending downward, or do you think it's stalled at about 3%?
I think it's kind of stalled, and it's very primed to go back up with any liquidity that the market sees.
Interesting. So you don't think the current monetary policy is restrictive enough then?
I don't think so. No.
So you would hike then?
You asked me this question literally, I think it was like 9 months ago, and or 6 months ago or something. And I said I would hike at that time. And yes, I don't think the Fed finished the job that they should have. If 2% is their real goal.
Wow. Interesting. So you don't think it's their real? I mean, the voices of those who say the Fed is not actually targeting 2%, but they have to say it, but they're going to take years to get to 2% is actually increasing. The number of people who believe that is increasing. And I mean, that alone could prompt Powell to be hawkish in his commentary because obviously he doesn't want that rhetoric. Whether that is the case or not, he does not want that rhetoric to spread. So this explains why he's been a bit more hawkish on the hawkish side in the last 2 days in his committee meetings. Stephen.
So if the CPI index comes in like a half a percentage point higher, how does that affect me? How does that affect the American consumer? Could you just explain like a broad correlation between those numbers and what we see? Is it just higher groceries, higher housing prices, higher everything, or you know what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, the CPI is obviously an overall weighted average of inflation. Not everybody's personal basket is a basket of consumption is like the CPI weighting. But in general terms, looks like cars have started to go up again. Car prices, especially used car prices, have started to increase again. Um, Food prices, especially coffee, eggs, and a bunch of other prices are going up quite substantially. So that's a big problem um, as far as the Fed is concerned. Energy prices have been lower. Oil prices have remained lower. Um, Although during January, you would expect that anyway. And they actually haven't come down, like gasoline prices haven't come down as much as they usually do during this time of the year before the spring kind of driving season starts. So, seasonally adjusted, gasoline prices went up 1.8% January. And I'm looking at the report right now. And December went up 4%. So, that's 2 months of high inflation for gasoline and fuel oil as well. Utility gas service prices went up as well, 2.8% to 1.8% in the last 2 months. Used vehicle prices are the problem right now. So in the last 12 months, 48 months or so, sorry, 12 to 24 months or so, used car prices, goods prices have been deflationary, kind of pulling down the overall inflation. But now goods prices have turned back up. And that happened before service prices, non-housing services prices like core, super core service prices that people talk about. They've been kind of like sticky, and before the Fed broke the back of sticky inflation on super core, goods prices turning back up is a problem for the Fed. Used car and truck prices increased 2.2% in January, seasonally adjusted, on top of 0.8% increase in December, 1.3% in November, 1.2% in October, 0.5% in September. So for the last 5 months, used car and truck prices have been a problem. This is very significant increase. Let's see what else. Shelter was up again 0.4%. So the rhetoric, this kind of puts um, undermines the rhetoric that shelter prices are decreasing. Now, if you dig in one level deeper, you'll see that shelter prices uh, ticked up from zero point 0.3 in December to zero point 0.4 in January, not because of housing prices, but because of lodging prices. And that's in line with my kind of theory that this is due to the kind of sticky inflation is due to baby boomers continuing to spend like drunken sailors on travel, um, hotels, airlines, um, and cruises. So this is, month after month and month, the data shows that baby boomers are just not stopping. So if there are any baby boomers in the space, please watch, do us a favor, stop spending so much, and maybe the inflation will come down. Transportation services up 1.8% on top of 0.5% last month. So annualized, these are very significant. I mean, year over year, transportation services went up 8%. So that's a big problem for the Fed. Stephen?
So is there anything good that you could see for the economy for like a consumer? Like, is there anything that's not saying like everything's going to shit or poop? Sorry.
I mean, everything isn't going to ship. So, for example, let's see here. Like this was a bad report, but um, the sort of credit spreads are still low. Let's look at that real quick. Let's see, triple B um, yield. So
And
even
I
though
asked
inflation,
that.
even though inflation is high, still sticky, the wage growth is even higher. So wage growth is about 4%. I think it's about 4.5%. So inflation is about 3%. So real wages are increasing about 1% right now. So that's good for the economy. We haven't seen a surge in layoffs. So there's no imminent danger of a recession, I would say. Um, unless if you get a huge sell-off in the stocks, which I think is possible, but we'll see about that. Let's see. Triple B corporate index effective yield. No, that's not what I want. Hold on one second. The credit spreads. Okay, auction
Well, and
adjusted
I
spread.
asked this, Iman, because I think a lot of people, or at least a lot of maybe homeowners right now, find themselves stuck, not being able to, because houses still aren't moving on the market. So that's kind of why I was wondering, just from like wondering the perspective of the current health of the market for someone who's trying to maybe sell a house.
Yeah, um I mean interest rates and mortgage rates are very high. Transactions are very low. But on the other hand, the number of sellers in the housing market is also very low. So it's not like people are panicking at this time. So you can still get record prices for your homes if you put on the market this spring. But you're probably going to have to be a bit more lenient than last spring when you're trying to negotiate a deal as the seller. ACDC?
Just in an answer to Stephen, here's something that you have to look forward to. And I'm going to stay away from any political names. I'm just going to call it a benefit. And that benefit, I think the American people will see coming to them is tax cuts. I'm not sure where you fall in the tax brackets, but last time in 2017, when Trump did a tax cut, it went meaningfully to the consumers that who really needed it. I actually got a tax raise. The SALT cap was put in place at that time, among other things also. But the narrative around that time was that, oh, look, see, everybody got a tax raise. And I literally had to sit down with people and I showed them, look at your paycheck and watch what you get. And everybody saw a benefit to them. So this whole thing with no tax on tips, perhaps maybe no tax on Social Security, all those things are going to come to people who actually really need it. For that, they need to cut government spending. And that's why Elon is in there like 24/7 and hasn't left since the election. Because without cutting government spending, they cannot deliver on these tax cuts entirely. So that's something that people have to look forward to.
Have they cut anything material so far?
I I think they've cut a lot of stuff. Everything I think that they've cut is material. It's just that every cost is broken down, and every cost you can't say that we don't know when it's going to hit the bottom line, right? These are multi-year contracts and everything, but just the effort itself in digging into unnecessary government spending, right? I mean, if you look at the government, you could look at your city government, state government, federal. You will never see a private company who will be able to function like that. Yet these governments have got bloated over the years and have been functioning like that. So it's going to take some time. And I don't think you can say that, oh, what's the big one meaningful thing? But the culmination of all of this spending at the federal level, it's definitely going to add up. I mean, if you think about this, right? We have most people in this space 100% believe in Elon. They want Elon back at Tesla because
Oh,
of what he did with Tesla.
100%. I wouldn't talk about
Okay,
100%.
okay, okay.
We
90,
have a very diverse
nine,
group here.
okay, okay. Let's just call it okay,
I don't
whatever
think so.
percent. Seven,
I'm just kind of looking through the crowd today. I would say it's half.
okay, 50%. Okay, okay. Maybe they don't want Elon back, but they can at least everybody can agree that Elon knows how to run a company efficiently, right? So if he can do that with a private company, I can't. I'm not saying that he can do the exact same thing and replicate it at the government level, but those efforts can yield a lot of gain. And this directly, forget about the political party, forget about your bias. This benefits every American.
Okay. Stephen?
So just two things. One, under Trump, it looks like my tax rate is going up, which is kind of expected. But also, even with all these tax breaks that we're sorry, not tax breaks, even with all these cuts that we're seeing up at the government being done by Elon Musk and his Doge team, no American's going to see any benefit of that. The only person who's really going to see anything from that are people who were using those programs that were being used by the poor and the whoever people. I'm not saying poor, but the programs were being used by people, but they weren't being used by the rich. But so no, we're never going to see the the benefit of all those cuts. But people are going to definitely
Okay.
feel them.
All right. Man, this is so crazy. I'm looking at the BLS website to get the PDF, a detail on CPI. And the PDF, I mean, this is like half a day after the release. And it's still reversed to December data. That's crazy. They still haven't updated the PDF. And this is like month after month. It's like, I mean, this is the worst I've seen. But all items less food and energy is 3.3%. Energy was 1%. Food was 2.5%. Major categories 3.0%. So core inflation being 3.3% on CPI, that's a very sticky issue, no pun intended, for the Fed. All right. ACDC, how many of these facts did you know before today? BYD delivers more EVs than Tesla. Did you know that? BEVs.
That I knew.
Okay. BYD earns more money than Tesla, both free cash flow and net income. Did you know that?
No.
Yeah. BYD offers more models than Tesla. I think everyone knows that. BYD includes ADAS for free on all cars. That's news a couple days ago. BYD ramps production faster than, I mean, I think everybody ramps production faster than Tesla. I don't know a company that ramps production slower than Tesla. BYD produces and sells batteries to Tesla. I think everyone in this space knows that. Um, but did you know that in 2024, BYD delivered 4.3 million vehicles, 41% increase from the previous year? Did you know that?
I did not. That's impressive. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when Tesla's sales went down 1%. So that's a massive surge in BYD's sales in 2024. This surge propelled BYD to become the fourth largest automaker globally, surpassing established brands like Honda and Nissan. So now you have Toyota 1, Volkswagen 2, Hyundai 3, and BYD fourth. And if they keep up this growth, they're going to pass Hyundai next year. That's wild. And this is they're doing this without having factories in all continents like everybody else does.
So a couple of interesting posts that I saw from Car Dealership Guy this morning. One was JD Power projects EV retail share will stay flat at 9.1% of sales this year, um, which is kind of like what we see, right? We're not seeing any growth, material growth from Tesla's volumes. If anything, if there's more carnage with the competition, then they could actually lose some share itself. And then also, there was a wholesale report basically saying that the Manheim Used Vehicle Value Index increased to 205.6, a gain of 0.8% year over year. So that's interesting. It kind of comes back to our discussion about Carvana, how it's still holding up and still has strength because the used car market is still pretty hot.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised by that a little bit because Tesla isn't seeing that benefit for sure. I mean, Tesla's inventories in the used market is rising pretty rapidly, especially the Model 3. And I think the same will happen with the Model Y throughout this year as the new model ramps. So where is the strength coming from? Any ideas?
It's coming from traditional vehicles. I mean, if you look at the overall, yes, 9% of auto sales will be EV sales, but yet only 1% of total cars in the United States are EVs. So there's still a lot of demand in those vehicles. I mean, you can look at Toyota Corollas, they get traded 5 times, change 5 different hands, over a course of 20, 30 years. And people still seek those out because they're great, dependable cars.
Yeah, I'm looking at some data from Car Gurus right now. In the last 12 months, the strongest part of the market in terms of depreciation is coupe, 1.4% down 1.4%. So the average, first of all, is down 3.5% year over year. Average listing price for all vehicles listed on Car Gurus, which is a lot of vehicles, is less than is 3.5 negative. And then coupe is 1.4% negative. Sedan is 1.7% negative, and minivan is down 1.7%. Now, those are the strongest, the best, better than industry average vehicle depreciation segments, body styles. And then the worst are van, negative 8.5%, wagon, but those are small markets. Let's see, pickup truck, negative 4%, and convertible, that's a small one too. SUV, negative 3%. So pickup truck and hatchbacks are negative 4.5%. And I suspect it probably it differs more when you look at price segment. I would think, like you mentioned, Corolla. I would think the cars priced at $20,000, $25,000 are having seen better demand than vehicles $40,000, $50,000. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. And I think the stat that I was pointing out to was wholesale prices, as depicted by the Manheim auction.
Yeah, yeah. These are retail listing prices. I mean,
Right.
both are important, but obviously the difference is the profit margin. So it also differs a lot from a brand perspective. Like Toyota, like you mentioned, Toyota Corolla. Toyota is actually up 1%. So the average listing prices for a Toyota, which is obviously one of the deepest markets on Car Gurus because of the number of vehicles and models and everything, up 1% year over year. Let's see who else did well. Lexus up 2%, which is Toyota's brand. Hyundai up 2%. BMW up 2%. So those are the major ones. There's a lot of small ones that are kind of varied, but worst. So those are the up ones. Worst are, let's see, Volkswagen down 5% year over year. Tesla down 13% year over year. That's amazing. I mean, I have a coffee bet actually that somebody won on that. Tesla down 13% year over year. And in the last 90 days, Tesla average listing prices for used Tesla on CarGurus is down 6%. So annualized, that's negative 24%, which tells me the depreciation is actually accelerating, which is amazing. So that really cripples Tesla's ability to charge higher prices, higher margins on the new vehicle side. Um, let's see who else kind of had that. I mean, I don't think there's anybody else who's worth mentioning with double-digit depreciation here. Maserati is down 15%. Jaguar down 7% year over year. Alfa Romeo down 9. So luxury vehicles are going to hit the most, really, or the brands that are at least seen as luxury are getting hit the most in terms of depreciation. Ram down 7%. Polestar down 18%. So Tesla vehicles are getting hit on both fronts. First, the fact that they're seen as a luxury vehicle. I think people are looking for more affordable options like Toyotas. And then second, Tesla's getting hit from the perspective that EVs lose a lot of value. And that's despite the fact that EVs get $4,000 of used EV credit. So imagine if that went away, that would be another 10-15% drop in used Tesla vehicle values. Any thoughts on that so far?
Yeah, no, EVs have struggled for all those reasons, and I think they will continue to struggle. I think the tax credit was one of the worst things that could have happened to Tesla. Everybody cheered it, but I think it was the sugar high, basically, which has now worn off, and Tesla's going to have to basically pay the price for that. And it can take years for it to recover and gain pricing power, and it'll take a long time. I think it could, but it'll take a long time. If you think about this, right, in terms of how the credit impacts the pricing. Right now, if you make, I think, individual income of 180,000 or less, joint income of 300,000 or less, you get a credit for $7,500. Well, that's great for those people. But what about anybody who's making income over that? They would never want to touch that vehicle because they don't get that credit. And yet, if they were going to go sell that car after 1 year and there's no depreciation that's occurred, right? For them, it's instantly down $7,500 because the guy who got the credit can sell it for $7,500 less. Exactly. So they've literally eliminated a big part of the market also just from that. I mean, these tariffs, I mean, I'm sorry, not the tariffs, but the credits, they look all great and everything, but I think it really skewed the demand, the true demand of the entire EV industry, and people are, paying for it now.
Exactly. Chris?
Yeah, I'm really glad I sold my Tesla 3 months ago, and man, I've been looking on Facebook, like I was telling you a few weeks ago, and I'm seeing like long range Model 3's great condition, $20,000. I saw a performance Model Y for $20,000. It's unreal. But I wanted to ask ACDC. It sounds strange to me because you're saying the tax credits are a bad thing for Tesla, but also a bad thing if they go away. So, do you want them to go away or do you want them to stay?
I think, like I said, the tax credits were sugar high, right? So yes, in the long term, they were bad. They brought in all these players into the market, took away share from Tesla. Eventually, a lot of these players will turn off their EV business and go away. But what will be the lasting effect will be the eroded pricing power of Tesla. So you can't. I was never a fan of them, and that's the reason why I think they should go away. I think if there's a value to a certain product, that product should be able to justify it and sustain its own value within the consumer marketplace. So I think it should go away. It'll be a little bit of a growing pain for a while, but it's kind of what you get coming off a sugar high.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with that view. All right. Anything else on Tesla? Anything else we're going to talk about? Let me see if there's any news. And then we can talk a little about Lyft, Uber. Um, man, did you know that BYD is so incredible to me that how BYD is not allowed to compete in US or China. So early 2024, BYD, China's largest electric vehicle manufacturer, was actively preparing to enter the Canadian market. Early 2024. The company had engaged in discussions with Canadian officials and potential distributors, signaling its intent to sell passenger EVs in Canada. However, in October 2024, the Canadian government implemented a 100% tariff on Chinese-made EVs. In response to these tariffs, BYD paused its plans to enter the Canadian market. As of February 2025, BYD's passenger vehicles are not available for sale in Canada. The company has not announced any updated plans regarding its entry into the Canadian market. This is just incredible to me. It's the same situation in the US. So US, Canada is actually acting like a 51st state of the US, and it's just amazing to me that BYD, the world's one of the top automakers, the cheapest cars that clearly, meet standards today as opposed to like a few years ago. I guess they didn't have enough, airbags or whatever. But today, they're the best value for the money, and they're not allowed to enter US or Canada. That really hurts the consumers, I think. And obviously protects the local automakers and the supply chain, which employs millions of people. I get that. But at the end of the day, if you're going to be a free market, then it's just this is crazy. It's crazy. Do you see that changing at all, ACDC?
I'm sorry, I lost you for a second. Could you just repeat that? Like, what are you asking me?
Do you see BYD entering the US and Canada market from which they've been kept out so far? We're talking about a total of 400 million people,
No, I don't think so. That would be the complete opposite of
and these
what.
are these are, by the way, the most profitable markets in the world.
Right, right, and that's exactly what was going to happen, and that's one of the things that Trump campaigned on, that to protect the auto industry, because he was warning, and as was Ford and everybody else, that if they are allowed to come here, our auto industry will be decimated. So
Yeah, it would. It would end pretty much in a few months, I think. Stephen?
So, is it safe to say the U.S. is just one big monopoly? Can we just agree on that and say, yep, that's what it is?
As of February 2025, BYD does not sell passenger vehicles in the US. The company has expressed that the US market is too complicated due to factors such as conflicting politics and market dynamics. However, BYD has a presence in the US through its commercial electric vehicles, including buses and trucks. The company operates a manufacturing facility in Lancaster, California, where it produces electric buses for various transit agencies across the country. While BYD has expanded its passenger vehicle sales into markets like Mexico and Europe, there are currently no announced plans to introduce its passenger cars to the US market. Wow. If you dig a little deeper into Tesla's used vehicle prices, year-over-year drops are largest for Model 3 and Model Y, 18, 19%. And Model S and X are, at this time, they're not material to the company at all. The Cybertruck, you can get a Cybertruck, as I understand, for 70 something $1,000 with a few miles on it. So I think that's going to really hurt new Cybertruck sales in 2025. I don't know what's going to happen to the Cybertruck line. ACDC, what do you think? Let's go to Chris. Chris, what do you think will happen to the Cybertruck line?
I haven't thought about it a lot, but man, it's actually a really good question. I was just looking at, Steve and Mark Ryan?
Yeah.
So I was looking back on some of his first videos, and it's like laughable now. He has this video with millions of views that's like Cybertruck is engineering genius and will be copied. And it's like did not age well at all, because it costs $100,000 to build, and ain't nobody copying that. Um, so yeah, I think it's gonna
I mean,
be.
I think I'm on the same. I mean, I'm not, if I'm not even worse than him on that front. About a year ago, I thought Cybertruck was going to be, was going to generate $1 billion of profits in Q4, and that obviously didn't happen. And that Tesla was going to increase sales by a lot, and it was going to be the best-selling truck, not just EV truck. And the production ramp just didn't meet expectations whatsoever. Tesla had talked about how they're going to sell this for $39,000, and obviously that is not happening anytime soon.
Basically, I think they sweep it under the rug like they did with Solar Roof. Like nobody's talking about Solar Roof. I don't even know what happened to Solar Roof. I don't see them anywhere. They built a whole factory for Solar Roof in upstate New York. Uh, so I think that's the fate of the Cybertruck is sweep it under the rug.
You can get a 2024 Cybertruck all-wheel drive today with 13,000 miles on it for $68,000. That's incredible. That's incredible.
A year ago, it was 168,000.
Yeah, it's like 50% drop in 1 year. That is wild.
I have a story about that. I reserved 3 Cybertrucks in 2019, the day after the event. And then they contacted me last year and said, "Hey, do you want to buy?" And of course, when they released it in 2019, they said it would be $50,000. And when they contacted me to buy it, it was over $100,000. And I thought, maybe I could buy it and flip it. And then I decided, no, I'm not doing that. And if I had tried to do that, I would have lost a ton of money.
Yeah. So is this the Cyber Beast? I'm trying to figure out if this is a Cyber Beast or the base model. It's got to be the Cyber Beast, right? If it's a year old.
You
Actually,
gotta
I
look
don't
at
know.
the VIN.
Hold on one second. Let me see. 320, 325 battery range. Um,
Does it say tri-motor?
it doesn't say. This is a Car Guru's listing in New York.
What's the VIN?
Oh, good call. Give me 1 second. Seven G2CEHED4RA. What is that?
Uh, I got the VIN decoder thing up. Just
Oh, okay.
I
You
gotta
want to read the whole
find out.
thing?
You want to just paste it in the chat, and I'll look it up, or I'll paste it in there.
Sure. Here, I'll send it to you. There you go. This should be in your notifications.
Yeah, I got it.
Cybertruck base electric motor. I think this is the base model.
Does anyone have any
It's base.
information about Solar Roof? Like, do you guys see those anywhere? Are they making any money at all from that, or are they losing a ton of money?
Nah, it's done. There's no solar roof. It's gone.
Like,
Gone.
I can't buy one.
I mean, you can buy one, but I don't think it makes any sense to buy one at this point. It's basically stuck at the Model S stage, or the Roadster stage even, and it's that Tesla's not prioritizing it. The solar panels just have gotten so much better. They've gotten thinner, they're cheaper, available everywhere, but from many people, many suppliers. So solar roof has just become kind of uneconomic. Yeah, dual motor. Thank you, Stephen. DGM asks, can you guys discuss Tesla Semi? My take was never a serious program. I mean, they're building a factory over there. Like, they're going to they're gonna produce it, etc. But we'll see where it goes. But I don't have my high expectations for it. ACDC. Any thoughts on Tesla's semi program?
So I've done my math on some of, I mean, I know you've had some spaces discussing that for hours. I never was convinced by it. I think it requires, the bigger the battery, the more the charging time, and these guys, they work on time limits and everything. So to me, the math never worked, unless it's for short hauls. For long hauls, the battery pack just doesn't really work.
Okay. Jimmy, welcome. What's new with you?
Thank you, sir. What's new? Just saw what's going on with Ukraine stuff. It does have an effect on Tesla, actually, if you think about it,
No,
because
we
of
don't
the
really. We're
lithium.
not really interested in geopolitics right now. What do you think about
Okay.
inflation?
I've always made the argument about stagflation. You know that it will continue to be there, so as long as there's this massive deficit.
Yeah. Do you think Doge will balance the budget
This year or the next 4 years?
this year or next?
Not this year, not next year. Probably by the fourth year might come close.
Okay. Do you think they will lower overall spending this year or next?
According to the next budget, 2026, they will ask Congress for less money, so they could reduce the budget, yes.
But that's not
Like,
what I asked.
the
I said
next budget will be,
I asked if the
yeah,
absolute dollars spent, government spending, and absolute dollars will go down this year or next.
probably not.
Yeah, I agree. Donald Trump says interest rates should be lowered, something which should go hand in hand with upcoming tariffs. I don't get that. How is he going from tariffs, which a lot of people think are inflationary, to interest rates should be lowered? Jimmy, what do you think?
Well, as I've always argued, if we can reduce the deficit over the long term, if there's an expectation by the consumer that they don't have to spend and they can save, then there is a chance that the savings rate goes up, inflation kind of declines over time, and we can have tariffs that are reciprocal. It has to be very complicated, though. It all has to work in sync. There have to be new trade agreements. And America cannot have these deficits. It only has one or two surpluses in the world. So he's wrong. But he could be towards the path of correctness if it turns out that the American consumer believes that they can save for the first time and not lose the value of money. That's such a hard thing to do psychologically. No American consumer has believed that since 2009.
$4 trillion debt limit increase and $4.7 trillion tax cut extension on the table today. Wow. Chris?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that you can just save and put the money in T-bills, and then you don't get devalued.
I mean, with these policies, I would be shocked if the long end of the curve didn't increase to 5% here. Jimmy, some T Rowe Price is talking about 6-7% long-term yields. What do you think?
Gosh, that would be expensive for our interest rate payments. It is likely, though, the way that we're going. The tax cuts, he's always argued that we can grow our way out of the debt. I think there's something else that people don't understand about the tax cuts. He's trying to basically say, if the US government doesn't cut its fiscal deficit, we basically will destroy ourselves if I do these tax cuts. So basically, if I do the tax cuts, it's going to be very expensive. And the only way to balance the books is to cut the deficit. So I'm forcing you to do it by doing these tax cuts. It's a psychological thing as well.
Yeah. Some news. Republican senators proposed $1,000 tax on new EV purchases to account for road repair costs. This is at the top of our screens, according to Cheddar Flow. This is 11 minutes ago. Republican senators proposed $1,000 tax on new EV purchases to account for road repair costs. Okay. Jimmy, I published an article that argues for $100 target price for Tesla stock. What do you think?
I think you're right. I think it is an overvalued stock. But I even seen a lot of Tesla maxis say, yeah, it could go down to $100. But if that is the price we have to pay for freedom, because Elon Musk is becoming unpopular, I'd rather have that than just have a highly valued stock and no freedom at the end of the day. So let Elon do his thing at Doge, let people hate, and then let's figure it out after he cleans up the mess. If that's a theory that they want to give now, if that's the new narrative, go for it.
So did you sell your stock if you think the stock will go to 100?
I am selling. I am following your advice. I am a listener and a learner when it comes to what you have to say.
Okay. Steven?
Hey, Jimmy, are you familiar with the branches of government? You know we have 3 of them.
Actually, did you know Doge is just a renamed office?
Okay. You're a fan of what Elon's doing, I'm assuming.
So you realize everything he's doing is legal. It's actually being led by Treasury officials, right?
If we continue to ask each other questions, we're not going to get anywhere. So,
Okay, well, I'd like to ask you more questions. Can I ask you more than you ask me?
okay. Um, go for it.
So what's the problem with renaming an office in the executive branch and doing what has been done before? Bill Clinton had the same office do very similar things, and it was a Democrat, and no one ever said anything.
No, I got no problem renaming things. That's not an issue. You want to rename something? I don't think that's an issue.
It's also being led by Treasury Department officials as well. It's not like he's not working under their purview.
Okay. So now that you've asked your question, I'm just going to go back. Are you familiar with the 3 branches of government?
Are you even an American?
All right, we're not going to go into this 101.
Okay.
So Spencer Hakimian says if Doge is serious about lowering long-term interest rates, Elon tells Donald to give up tax cut plan ASAP. You don't do a $5 trillion unfunded tax cut when nominal GDP is growing at 6.5% and unemployment is at 4.0%. Prove that you're serious about rates at Doge. Doge or Doge. I don't know how to say it. Is it Doge or Doge?
Doge.
Doge. Okay. All right. Daily average mortgage rates climbed to 7.13% today, following January's hotter than expected inflation report. Man, I think home prices are about to tank, honestly, but what do I know? Key congressional Democrats warn bank regulators against aiding Doge actions, according to Wall Street Journal. Elizabeth Warren, Maxine Waters urged regulators not to aid in any unconstitutional requests in the letter. Canada Premier is meeting with Trump on Wednesday, according to sources. Jimmy, do you think Canada should become a 51st state of the US?
It was supposed to twice. During the American Revolution, we were supposed to take it over. It didn't work. And in the War of 1812, we invaded it, and it didn't work. But let's not forget, Greenland will become ours. We purchased Alaska. We were also supposed to purchase British Columbia from the British Empire. But they undermined that by granting Canada independence. So we couldn't invade a newly independent country after Abraham Lincoln was assassinated. The Civil War had just ended. We had to spend all of our money on reconstruction, and we never got to finish the job.
Canada wasn't established till 1867, Jimmy.
Yeah, so Abraham Lincoln was shot. Okay, his plan was to invade Canada. It was part of the British Empire at the time. By the time that he died, Andrew Johnson was now in charge, and so he didn't want to invade Canada.
If you think Canada should become a 51st state, I didn't ask for a history lesson here.
Absolutely, yes.
Absolutely what? No?
Yes, absolutely, yes.
Okay. All right. Well, what do you think about this following tweet I sent today? I opened my eyes in the morning. I was like, you know what? I'm going to send a tweet about this. I don't know where these thoughts came to me while I was in my sleep. But from my bed, I tweeted this out. Elon silently quit Tesla in 2021 when he secured or thought he secured his stock based compensation package. Those who think Elon is still motivated to do his best at Tesla because he owns 13% of the company should note that Elon would still be the richest person on earth, even if Tesla went to zero. Elon owns majority stakes in his other companies such as SpaceX, XAI, and Neuralink, and that's why Tesla has become his least favorite and gets the least amount of attention. The sinking Tesla stock price is Elon's way of teaching us the lesson that founders matter and that he should have been paid and offered another comp package to work at Tesla. What do you think?
Well, I think that's true. And I also think that he believed he accomplished his mission. That Tesla became one of the largest car companies in the world, and it's self running. He doesn't have to say a lot originally for it to pump the price, and that he could basically say, look at the evidence of my success. There's Tesla, and move on to projects which he thought were tangential. Now, whether or not they are truly tangential is another question. But, a lot of people can believe this. He did hire a ton of executives when he first started to basically go through that plan. And these executives are his age, some of them retiring now. And those executives have picked their replacements. This is a generational change. And we have to admit he's got ADHD. The dude cannot stay focused for more than a few seconds. So why not let him do it?
ACDC, what do you think of my take that I shared this morning in that tweet?
So I agree with part of your take. I think, yes, he's less interested in Tesla. But like I said, I replied to your post. I don't think it's because of the compensation. I think it is kind of like what Jimmy just said. He's already accomplished what he needed to. What could he possibly do? What could he do to sell more EVs right now in this market? What could he do to accelerate FSD or sit down and talk to Optimus and help them learn, right? There's nothing that he can really do. So he's focused on the other projects which are in their initial startup phase, which do need his expertise, his leadership, and his guidance. And that's where he's focused. And his other focus, which is on saving the country from this drowning debt, which he has openly said, and I don't know why people are like surprised by it. He has openly said this, that if we don't save the country, there is no Tesla, there is no other company, there is nothing, right? So he's focused on his priorities, and I think he's doing the right thing.
So, Jimmy, ACDC thinks that Elon will quit Tesla as CEO in the next 2 years. Yes or no? Do you agree?
Yes, and I think he kind of has to at this point if he's going to involve himself in the federal government.
Wow. When do you think Elon will announce his just exiting as CEO from Tesla?
When he gets his first big positive impacts of Doge, and he's going to say, guys, we've been so successful winning along with Donald Trump. I love him more than a straight man can love anyone else. And times come from change. Let's go for a change. Tesla is now without me. Blah, 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 blah.
No way. I mean, that would be insane. That would really surprise me. Chris and then Steven.
Yeah, I want to respond to ACDC. First of all, I think you're right. Elon's doing the right thing, saving America from bankruptcy. But the idea that there's nothing he could do for Tesla, I mean, it sounds silly to me. I think that he is still a brilliant engineer who could help with the Optimus project, who could recruit great engineers to help with full self-driving, robotaxi. I think he could try to do something with the Cybertruck line, maybe just delete it. I think there's a lot he could be doing for Tesla.
Yeah, I
And
agree
Chris,
with Chris. I think if Elon was focused, Tesla would still be ahead of BYD. But the fact is, BYD is eating Tesla's lunch everywhere except for US and Canada, where BYD is not allowed to compete. Steven and then ACDC.
I mean, one thing of note is that while Elon is helping save us from this, mountain of debt, he found 38 million for SpaceX, and that was just awarded recently for experiments in I don't know what, but It's crazy what he does. 38 million.
ACDC?
Yeah, and getting that contract for 38 million for SpaceX, he probably saved another 150 million, which would have gone to NASA, and nothing would have come out of it instead. So there's two ways of looking at it. But I mean, as a rebuttal to Chris, you don't think that he has the right leaders in place, that those are the people who are recruiting the right people? I mean, does Elon sit in those interviews himself, or do they submit the resume straight to Elon for review? I think, all those things are still in place. I don't know what more he could do with the Cybertruck. It was, I think, an engineering experiment of his, and it didn't work out. And sometimes things don't work out, and you kind of have to scrap it. But what Tesla is suffering right now is because of just the general EV demand in the United States, and it has nothing to do with Tesla. It's just the general market sentiment. There's nothing that he can do to reverse that.
But
He
that's
is
not. But
focused.
that's not exactly true, right? It's not just the EV sentiment. I mean, BYD grew 41% last year, and Tesla shrank 1%. So that's not just EV growth. BYD is ahead of Tesla on many fronts.
Correct. And BYD's sales are all outside of the United States. With Tesla's sales, are we at nearly 50% in the United States?
No, I think Tesla has majority outside the US, but I think US is about 45%.
40, 45%? Okay,
Yeah.
right. So you think he could cut down the production costs personally himself in the Shanghai Gigafactory
I mean,
and compete with BYD?
I think there's something to be said about, the founder, the boss being around. I think all of the programs would move faster at Tesla if Elon was present, sleeping on the factory floor. And with him focused so much on the White House instead, in my opinion, Tesla is at risk of losing money in 2025. Like, bottom line, losing money in 2025. And the fact is, without these EV credits, Tesla's gross margin would be negative. So that is not a good place to be, especially when you're worth $1.2 trillion. Chris and then Jimmy.
Yeah, Elon said it time and time again that it makes a difference if the leader is on the front lines in the trenches. That's not where Elon is right now. He's at the White House. I think Tesla saw tremendous success for many years because Elon was personally recruiting top talent in the world. He got Andre Carpathy, he got Drew Baglino, JB Straubel. I don't know who's at Tesla. Maybe you have more information than I do. Maybe Elon recruited top talent in the world and then went to the White House. Is that what happened? I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, that still doesn't change my argument, right? I mean, you can't recruit all the people. First of all, I don't think there's any evidence that top talent is working at Tesla today. But secondly, even if that was the case, it's better to have the boss around than not. Jimmy?
I do want to add, they are negotiating these new trade agreements. Just had that call of Modi. And those trade agreements could mean America can export again to these countries cars. And these cars would be Teslas, owned by Tesla, to make those profits. A lot of these BYD sales are in countries where they have to partner locally, and they lose a large portion of that margin with their local partners who do distribution, quote unquote, which is basically just means if you don't do this local partnership, you won't be able to sell your car here. So there are opportunities, but we need to renegotiate these trade agreements. The fact that India, one of the largest markets in the world, is so incredibly closed off and yet is able to export so much to the United States, I think in Elon's mind, unless we get these new trade agreements done, Tesla, its growth is going to be limited by the fact that it is an American company.
What growth? Tesla doesn't have any growth. Tesla's shrinking.
It needs growth.
Hey, Jimmy, let me ask you something. In 2 years, do you think the average tariff rate around the world is going to be higher or lower than today?
I hope that Donald Trump negotiates and makes agreements, so therefore it could be lower, but I doubt it, so it'll be higher.
Yeah, I think there is a I think it's more likely than that it's going to be higher. I don't think, I actually don't think that he is just using these as talking points or negotiation points. I think the tariffs will increase before, if they ever go down. And I guess there is a historical analog to the current situation where tariff wars got out of hand, and the president had to come in and say, replace the person doing negotiation, and kind of eliminate bilaterally um, most of the tariffs. Do you guys remember? I'm asking the older ones. Jimmy, do you remember what I'm talking about?
Well, you're referring to George H.W. and his there was his commerce secretary was trying to renegotiate through these trade wars with Australia and many other countries. You can look it up, and there's even a documentary about it that came out on PBS. And then he came in and basically phoned up the different prime ministers, like, "Okay, this needs to end." Are you referring to that one?
Yeah, I think so. But there's a name
Okay.
for that
So
saga,
there
right? What
was,
was the name?
I think it was called the Sheep Wars, wasn't it? It
No,
started off about.
no.
Uh,
ACDC, do you know what I'm talking about?
Are you talking about the the 91 era?
Let me get back to you guys on this. Let me do some
Okay.
research and get back to you. I just heard about it today, and I want to research. I
Just
want to read about it.
sure. Just a quick correction to Jimmy though. Jimmy, India does not export a lot to the United States. Okay.
exports
Last
people.
year, okay. Are you gonna? Can you quantify that as a GD as an actual export? You
Seven
know
hundred
that's
thousand illegal Indian immigrants in the United States right now.
right, and deal with that. And yes, send them all back. Okay, I'm with you on that. But in terms of exports, when you're saying like comparing, like they should open up the economy because of that, no, we get less than 3% of our imports from India. Okay, so
The
that's not
number
really a
of
leverage.
Indians coming to the United States is an economic export because India has so few natural resources. The only thing they can export are people. And I don't mind that. I am pro India. I call him Modi ji for a reason. Okay? But we have to admit that human export is a form of economic export. And I love India. I'm a BJP non Indian national member. Okay? You can become one. Okay? I believe the Khalistani movement should become an FTO, foreign terrorist organization designated. Okay? I believe in India. But let's have some reciprocity here. Let's have some equal terms. America should be able to establish business with its new ally, India, easily, which is extremely hard. And we've had those agreements before. Thailand, Japan, South Korea,
Okay.
Taiwan, those countries have them.
Okay. So we have Earl. I'm going to get to him in a second, but the global tariff I was talking about is actually 1930. The Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act was one of the most infamous tariff policies in history, contributing to the deepening of the Great Depression. It led to a global trade war and significant economic contraction worldwide. Give me 1 minute to read this. The 1929 stock market crash led to rising unemployment and economic uncertainty in the US. Many American industries, especially agriculture, were struggling with declining prices and foreign competition. Senator Reed Smoot and Representative Willis Hawley proposed higher tariffs to protect American farmers and manufacturers from foreign competition. The act raised U.S. tariffs on over 20,000 imported goods, with an average tariff increase of 40 to 48%, targeted key industries including agricultural, textiles, steel, and chemicals, one of the largest tariff increases in U.S. history. Global retaliation. The U.S. trading partners retaliated with their own tariffs. Over 60 countries imposed counter tariffs on American exports. Global trade volume collapsed by 65% between 1929 and 1934. Canada, one of U.S. largest trading partners, imposed tariffs on U.S. agriculture and manufactured goods. European nations, including Britain, France, and Germany, increased their own trade barriers, and Latin American countries shifted trade relationships away from the U.S. toward Britain and other European nations. U.S. exports dropped by over 60% from 5.2 billion in 1929 to 1.7 billion in 1933. Industries that were supposed to be protected suffered from falling demand due to retaliation. Agriculture was hit hardest, contributed to mass layoffs and bankruptcies worsening the Great Depression. Economists opposed the bill. 1,028 economists signed a petition urging President Hoover to veto it. Even Henry Ford and JP Morgan criticized it, predicting economic disaster. President Herbert Hoover signed it into law in June 1930, despite widespread opposition. The act became a symbol of economic mismanagement and played a role in Hoover's landslide loss to Franklin Roosevelt in the 1932 election. Repealed in 1934, President Roosevelt passed the Reciprocal Trade Agreements Act, which lowered tariffs and promoted trade agreements with other nations. Economists widely regard the Smoot-Hawley as one of the worst economic policies in the U.S. history. It demonstrated how protectionist policies can backfire, leading to trade wars, economic contractions, and job losses. So, Jimmy, why do you think this round the Trump tariffs will not result the same way as Smoot-Hawley tariffs did?
Because at the time the U.S. was an exporter, it had trade surpluses, especially with the gold. We needed basically gold surpluses to do a reserve the U.S. dollar. Today, though, again, we only have a few countries who have a trade surplus with us, who basically they buy American airplanes. So it's quite different. We need a surplus long term. Some of these countries, we can continue having a deficit, most others, but we are also the world's reserve currency. So there are some differences. But I'm sorry, I'm not old enough to remember that. As you asked if
Yeah, I
anyone
don't
was old
know.
enough to remember that.
You sound pretty old enough to remember that. I don't know. Earl, how are you?
I'm doing well. I thought I tuned into Tesla Live. I didn't know this was Tariff Live.
Yeah, I mean, we discuss everything here, from Tesla to other stocks,
Oh,
from
we do.
macroeconomics to politics, geopolitics. All is on the table. What do you want to talk about?
That's wonderful. Well, it's good to see you around, and always enjoy your spaces. I think I don't know. I don't have anything to say about the tariffs, but Tesla, I'm a little concerned as somebody who's held this stock since 2015. I'm having trouble with my bull case currently. I messaged you about this, but I do kind of wonder. I think a lot of the valuation hinges on this idea that they're a leader in a lot of these areas, and I just don't know if that's going to hold. I'm nervous that that won't hold water over time, and then I wonder how that will work out with their valuation if they're kind of moving away from making a bunch of cars and it's just robo taxis. Anyway, it just made me nervous. I mean, I didn't sell or anything, but I am having trouble. Like usually I can put together like, well, why do you hold that stock? What's your bull case? And I'm struggling at the moment, so I'm sure there's a lot of bulls here that would tell me otherwise. But
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah. I mean, I'm not a Tesla bull at this point. I published an article that says Tesla stock will drop 80% to less than $100 per share, and the article is at the top. And but if anybody wants to argue the bull side of Tesla stock, you're welcome to request to speak and do so and give Earl some comfort. But Earl, you
yes,
said
please.
Tesla is a leader in many of these areas. Which areas are you talking about?
No, none. I think it needs to be. Like I think they need to be to make the valuation work and to have a higher valuation, they need to be a leader in AI, robotics, robo taxis, and batteries and energy, right? But I wonder if they are leading in any of those things. It's not like they're not good at them. I think they make great cars, but they're buying batteries from BYD. It seems like there's autonomy happening in many other locations, and Tesla's kind of getting on board here. It seems to be late now, and I just wonder what's going to come out of China and if they're just going to make more and better EVs and robots and kind of eat Tesla's lunch. I don't know. I don't have any facts to back that up, but that's how I've been thinking lately.
Okay, Jimmy, do you want to give Earl some comfort? I mean, do we have a Tesla bull here in this space?
Where'd
Maybe
they go? Did you
maybe
chase them
Wave.
all?
I don't know what happened. Maybe Wave wants to come up
It was
and argue the bull side.
well, this isn't helping.
All right. Well, let me just read.
I mean, how about this?
Hold
It
on.
may not
So
be.
let me just read some of these YouTube live comments. I think they're mostly bullish comments. So let's see what people say here. Kevin King says lower interest rates. If the bond market has more confidence in fiscal responsibility of the government, all Americans will benefit from this. If BYD is so much better than Tesla, Kevin says, what is stopping them from setting up a manufacturing plant in the US? All the tariffs and all the protectionism, obviously. Brooke Wapanza says Yaman BYD vehicle safety ratings are poor. I think that was the case, but I don't think that's the case anymore. Gook says, I see a lot of BYD and other Chinese made vehicles mangled in crashes with occupants dead or severely injured. Cheaper does not equal safety. Okay. Bobby Bishop says BYD has already stated they have no interest in building cars in the US. Kevin King says, if the US is one of the biggest car markets in the world, why would they not want to build and sell cars in the US? Okay. Brooke says, in my opinion, Bobby Bishop says they cited unstable political situation and red tape. Gook says, in my opinion, Elon Musk has been radicalized by the far right and he has now gone off the reservation. He is not pissing off everyone. The result will destroy Tesla stock. Gook says, in my opinion, Elon Musk has mentally and emotionally checked out of Tesla. And Elon's plan was to get Tesla to sell 20 million EVs within 10 years. Well, we are 5 years in. Tesla sold less vehicles in 2024 than they did in 2025. And I think, in my opinion, 2025 is going to be even lower than 2024. Group says, in my opinion, Tesla Cybertruck is dead. Anyway, so I was trying to read some bull arguments, but if you want some bull arguments, Earl, Kevin King, and Kevin King is your man. Wave.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Nice and rainy in SoCal. Unfortunately, I don't have a lot to give to Earl, but not sure what his time horizon is. If it's more than 10 years, or the only thing that I see in terms of the bull case for the current valuation is the Optimus.
Yeah. And I wonder about that, right? Like, I think Tesla was supposed to blow our doors off with autonomy like a long time ago. And it just feels like, I don't know. I wonder if they're going to be the company making these robots. But
Well,
my time horizon, like, I bought 15, so I've been holding like almost 10 years. So
yeah, I'm a long-term investor as well too, and but I think the Optimus is, if you're talking about focus, I believe that is the probably a number one focus. I think as far as autonomy, it's pretty much done, and it's more of operationalizing it over the next 3 to 5 years for robotaxi fleets, following after Waymo model. But as far as I think the only surprise that we could have is in term for bulls is really accelerating the Optimus by dropping and moving the production a lot quicker and cost down. As far as Cybertruck, I was really disappointed not to see any of the technology into the Model Y, because to me, Cybertruck, the way I justified it was cost down probably in the first year, and then leverage all the technology like steer by wire and so forth into the new platforms. And maybe I'll also do a van, something like similar to what Rivian just did, which is a lot of use case for that.
yeah, I think
I
I've
mean,
had a hard time.
I actually think that the Optimus project is more likely to be pushed on the back burner, like the solar roof project, than come to volume production. What do you guys think about that? Wave, what do you think about that?
I simply think they can't afford it. They're betting the whole company on that. Elon has said it clearly twice, I think, on his conference calls. That's his number one priority because he knows it. It's the same thing when he said 4 or 5 years ago
Well,
about
Elon says a lot of
Optimus.
different things, and let me read you what Elon Musk's lawyers say about what Elon says. Defendants next argue that several timeline and safety statements, statements 7, 9 to 11, 13, 16, 18, and 26, are non actionable statements of corporate puffery and optimism. In the Ninth Circuit, Vague, generalized assertions or corporate optimism or statements of mere puffing are not actionable material misrepresentations under federal securities laws because no reasonable investor would rely on such investments. So basically, what Elon's lawyers are saying, Wave, is that if you believe what Elon says, you are not a reasonable investor.
Those are pretty good lawyers. I like those language that they use.
The best money our stocks can buy.
Yeah, my thesis on it was without really coming out with a blowout on there's really nothing, no other cards to play. If autonomy is going to uh, prevent people from buying cars, so you're not going to be making money on the selling of cars, so you go into a software subscription model. The only other next thing to hang your coat on for the company future would be Optimus, in addition to energy, but that's a commodity anyway.
Well, there are Chinese players who are already producing humanoids and appear to be
Right.
very capable. So, Tesla had a decade lead in EV production, in volume EV production. And even with a decade lead, Chinese players came, leapfrogged, and now demolishing Tesla anywhere outside of US and Canada where BYD is not allowed to compete. So with humanoids and autonomy, Chinese players appear to be, on lockstep with Tesla, if not better. I mean, BYD just announced that they're going to include ADAS systems, level 2 plus 3 and 4, for free in their production. So why do you think, Wave, Tesla, without its leader, sleep on the factory floor today, focused on a dozen different things, why do you think Tesla will be the winner here?
They won't unless they have the founder mentality. They they've lost
Yeah.
the founder mentality since I don't want to put a timeline on it, but I'm an entrepreneur. I've had 4 or 5 businesses, and if you don't have that hunger, and there's somebody else out there that's going to come out and do what I'm doing for half the cost and better quality. Um, and that was always the key man risk in terms of bringing someone else on that continually innovates. So you can, I think he called himself technology, not even a CEO. He didn't like that title. It was something more, I love to work on product. I'd rather have him work 100% on product. But yeah, you're right. If we don't have that, and I haven't seen a leader um, uh, come forward on the optimist side to be the champion for that. Um, so yeah, it is risky without a founder mindset.
Earl, any additional comments?
I was just gonna say, for me as a long-term investor, the Cybertruck was a bit of a red flag for me. When I went to see the reveal and then I learned about it, I really drank all of the Kool-Aid available about what this thing was gonna be. That between the tech, it was gonna be cheap, it was gonna have long range. They had this exoskeleton thing going on. They had all these kind of things that were gonna be really amazing about it. And sadly, by the time, of course, it was delayed, but I wasn't surprised, right? But by the time it came out, um, for the first time, like usually they would beat their specs, like there would be surprises of something had more range or better charging or something cool. But the Cybertruck really was, just kind of some panels on a truck, and then they're going to put batteries in the bed to try to make it close to the range. The price went way up. It just it was surprising to me, like that because that to me was one of the things I loved about Tesla. They always just seemed to be just 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 crushing everybody else, and like even what they said they would come out with, they would step that up by the time the car came up. And the Cybertruck really felt like they phoned it in a bit, and that was concerning to me. And then so watching them over the years, and like you said, Yama, watching like the Solar Roof, then we were going to have semi trucks that were going to beat rail. We were going to have autonomous semi trucks that were going to beat rail. We were going to have all these battery breakthroughs that were going to just bury the competition. We were going to have autonomy many, many years ago, which changed a lot. Like before, it was we're going to flip a switch and all your cars are going to be taxis. And now it seems like, well, your tech probably isn't going to work. You need the newest tech. We're going to have a cyber cab. Like everything's kind of like changed a little bit. So anytime they've had like a really big tech revolution that's in the way and happening soon, those haven't happened really in a long time. So I'm very skeptical of them coming in and just beating everybody in robotics when there's people who are literally working on this day and night, outworking people. And if Tesla is a series of startups, like Elon always said, imagine if you invested in a startup company and that the boss of it left, right? Like he is literally never at work. That would be a concern. And I just don't
He's
like
working from home. He's working
I
from
find
home.
it yeah, I find it difficult to believe that you can come in and dominate AI, robotics, autonomy, batteries, et cetera, without even really having your guy, who's supposed to be a genius. And yeah, maybe he calls in or stops by once in a while, but it's definitely not like there. It would be hard to believe there's not somebody else out working Tesla at this point. And that was one of the strengths of Elon is he was really hungry to make Tesla work. And he was always talking about it. They were very innovative. I bought a Model 3, I bought a Model X, and had a good
Yeah.
story that went along with like clean energy
I mean, look at
and
this.
the,
Look
the
at this.
future.
Look at this ad I just put up at the top. This person, Eric Blank, says, "Want to stop Musk? Rally at your local Tesla store on February 19 to support federal workers and state public services." So there's a gathering going on February
Whatever.
February 19, local store, 5:30 p.m.
Yeah,
So
yeah. And like feel about his politics is fine, but that's usually not good for a company, right? Like these type of things are not like great news. So
yeah,
I like I said, I've been just kind of struggling, and what I'm really having a hard time with is just seeing what's coming out, especially out of China and the EVs they're making, the advances in robotics, and thinking, is Tesla going to be able to dominate this space without their
yeah.
person? I
Let's go to
I, I don't know.
let's break it up a little bit. Chris, go ahead.
Hey, I wanted to talk briefly about Optimus. Um, Yaman, you mentioned yesterday that you think it's worth zero. I want to like circle back to that and like, if Tesla came to you and said, "We're spinning out Optimus as a standalone company, so all the engineers, all the prototypes, all the R&D, what do you think the markets would value that at, and what would you value that at?"
So you're taking, sorry, if there's a spin-off, what would be the value of Optimus? Is that the question? Yeah, I mean, you can't, that's hard to do because obviously Optimus is using a lot of the same people that are working on FSD. Optimus is going to be using the Cortex data center to train, and a lot of the hardware is going to be the same in terms of perception. The it sounds like it's going to have the end-to-end neural networks and everything. So it's hard to spin it off. But the first question I would ask is Elon 100% focused on it and the spin-off or not? And without it, I think it's worth zero. And that's the case today. Elon is not focused on Tesla in any of the projects. And back when Tesla had a decade lead in EV production, a decade lead over everybody else, Elon was sleeping on the factory floor. He was focused only on Model S as opposed to a bunch of products. And this was his 100% focus. And that's not the case today on any stretch of the imagination. Tesla has a lot of products. Cybertruck has not been it has not been as positive as I thought it would be for the company. And Troy says it costs $100,000 to produce a Cybertruck, so they can't really scale it either. And the Model 3 Highlands refresh hasn't really produced good results for the Model 3 program. Tesla is having to sell a lot of Model 3s at negative margins in China.
Yeah, I want to talk more about Optimus though. Like, does anybody know who's running the Optimus program? Like, do they have some genius guy in there? I'm like literally
I have no idea.
researching it right now. But they
Tesla has
started.
failed. Tesla also has failed to integrate into battery production of 4680s. FSD is nowhere close to 1 million robotaxis that was supposed to happen 5 years ago. So, yeah, I don't see how Tesla can win in anything it does, let alone Optimus, where there are literally hundreds of companies racing today, and
Yeah, I mean,
a lot of those are actually vertically integrated.
Tesla's
To
been working on Optimus since 2021, and it's now 2025. So 4 years later, I don't know if they haven't shipped anything yet. So I
I mean,
hope they do. I
it's
think
not even
yeah.
pencils down. It's not even pencils down. And on top of that, you're going to need tens of billions of dollars in training GPUs. The Dojo program failed too, and they don't have the tens of billions of dollars to put into buying GPUs, let alone develop their own. So, or attract the people to develop it. So Tesla doesn't have. I mean, without the DV credits, Tesla has negative gross margin. That's insane. You know, the guy who's supposed to be running Tesla Energy left the company a year ago, Drew Baglino. He's the same guy who's supposed to be running 4680s. The guy who was supposed to be running Dojo left a couple of years ago. So these are all signs that none of these things are going to actually materialize to anything material in the next couple of years. And they can put up all the hiring job postings and everything, for Optimus, but that doesn't mean anything. They had job postings for Solar Roof too. Go back and look at it. Same job postings for Solar Roof, which never materialized to anything. And all of this comes down to the lawyer's note that these are statements of mere puffing, not actual material, because no reasonable investor would rely on such statements. I think of ACDC as a reasonable investor. I'm always surprised that he still thinks that Tesla will do robotaxis in Austin by June. But it is what it is. That's why we have a market, I guess.
There may be some version of that, but I feel like they'll probably get started and basically like be like baby Waymo, where it's supervised. Either
Yeah.
there's a driver or they're controlling them with cameras. I don't think there's going to be some major tech revolution in June. They might
I
get
don't think it's going to be a volume robotaxi fleet.
no.
I think it's just going to be kind of few, maybe in Austin. Maybe if they do it by June, who knows? ACDC and that's Spidey Trade. ACDC?
Yeah, sorry about that. I forgot to unmute myself. I was just saying that that's exactly what I've said, that I don't expect this to be a volume thing. I think the road ahead is very long with a lot of bumps along the way. But I think in a limited market, they'll be able to do. It's just a show. It's basically a show that, hey, we're getting there. Hey, we're doing something, right? That's what Tesla stock investors love the most. That's what drives enthusiasm and thus the price. So that's all I think that's going to come out of it come June in Austin. And then I just had a quick question. We could come back to these answers later, but I just want to ask Wave and Earl, as long-term investors in Tesla, what would it take for you guys to ever be like, okay, the investment thesis is no longer there, and I don't want to own it? Is there like a specific trigger that would event or something that would happen that would change your decision?
Yeah, it's hard to say. Like I said, I've been holding the stock for so long, and one thing that does ring true, I think, is not betting against Elon. He seems to find a way. This is his bread and butter. This is his piggy bank, and he's in with the government. He seems to make things work out when things seem really dire. I think if I was a smart investor, I probably would have dumped my stock many times based on the facts, right? Of like what what the odds were of this company making it. But I just held on to it and kind of believed in the company. So I don't know. It would be hard to really see something. I'm sure if there was something glaring, I'd probably be too late. Like the stock was already crashed. I'm terrible at this. That makes sense.
Spidey?
Hey man, thanks for having me up. Yeah, I agree with everything you're saying. I just want to add like another one of the promises that are being made is the Roadster from Tesla. I was reading an article about how it's been I think 5+ years and people put a deposit down and there hasn't been anything since then. They just like basically came out and showed it. And like to me, that's a writing like another example to add to your space is they're just throwing things out there and saying, okay, give me your money, and after that they just walk away and turn your back. I own the Model X. I got rid of it last week. I've been a long time investor in and out, but I haven't been in the stock in probably over like since December. I was writing some options and that was about it. But I'm just completely don't believe in the company anymore and just how they squeeze people when you do get them. Like when you do get a Tesla, how they continue to like, try to squeeze you out of things and like the charging rates almost double since when I first got it. And so it's like to me, it's not even worth it anymore.
Spidey,
Okay,
don't.
five.
I don't want to shame anybody, but there's no way you could fit in a roadster. There's no
Eh,
way.
all right. Now we have 5 minute warning. 5 minute warning. Okay, just a couple of Powell. Powell is headlines from his um, speech today. If Doge eliminated $1 trillion of spending, it's hard to say how it would affect the economy. Powell says looking for PPI data tomorrow for read-through to PCE. Powell says didn't see much progress on core inflation last year. Okay. White House Speaker Johnson says he believes the White House is considering exemptions to the reciprocal tariffs, including autos and pharmaceuticals. Okay. Powell says it's past time for Congress to work on federal debt. Chevron to lay off 15 to 20% of its workers. Wow, that's amazing. Powell says in hindsight, probably could have halted QE earlier. Okay. Anything else? Trump says he and Putin agreed to have respective teams start negotiations immediately. Okay. Majority of U.S. Senate approves Tulsi as Director of National Intelligence. House Speaker Johnson says he believes Republicans will have the votes to pass newly unveiled budget resolution. Okay. Powell says long rates went up, but it wasn't about inflation. Powell says we're holding rates where they're awaiting further evidence of inflation coming down. Swap spreads already 10 bips wider in a few weeks. Swap spreads already 10 bips wider in a few weeks, according to Joseph Wang, showing Bloomberg data. Joseph Wang also says the Trump administration can still ease financial conditions even without the Fed. Regulatory changes could lower 10-year by 50 basis points by widening the swap spread. Granting REITs access to FHLBs could narrow the mortgage spread. It's not just about short rates. ACDC, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so there has been quite a bit of narrative around that, and that's the reason that they've said that the 10-year Treasury is already backed down recently. It hasn't backed down because of any Fed policy, because of any CPI data or anything, but it was just literally because of the spending reduction or the hopes for the spending reduction. So I think it does have some merits into it, and I'd like to read that more. Yeah.
Okay, Chris?
Yeah, what I was going to say was I am looking for a new company to get excited about now that I'm not excited about Tesla. I need someone to fill that void. So if anyone has any ideas, please let me know.
Okay.
I don't say this often, Chris, but DM me.
Wave?
I just wanted to respond to ACDC. For me, the decision wasn't binary. I have 3 accounts. On one of them, I'm completely out of Tesla. On the other, which is a Roth, I'm out of Tesla. The only area that I own Tesla is in a SEP IRA.
Okay, JP Morgan, U.S. workers notified of job cuts on February 5 for JP Morgan. So there's some cuts, but we don't really know the level. ACDC?
Before you close the space, I just wanted to share. It was while I was on the space. I was in and out, working from home today. I went to pick up my wife for lunch, and it's a big snowstorm, winter storm here in Chicago right now. So there's many schools have been shut down and whatnot. But I tried the FSD, and I had one of the worst disengagements ever. Interventions, actually, critical interventions, where it literally skidded trying to make a turn, and I was helpless. And I'm glad that I took over just a fraction before. Maybe it would have stopped by itself, but I was, I pressed the brake. It was already kind of going into ABS, and it stopped just before the curb. I would have hit the curb. And after that, I drove it myself. I put it into the off-road assist mode, which is great for anybody who's ever driving in snow conditions. Drive it in that mode because it engages all four wheels at the same time, which it does not do on a regular basis. But it was a really bad intervention, and it may be ready for Austin, but coming to the Midwest, wide rollout, anything, we're a long time away from it.
Yeah, that's exactly what I hear from my friends in Northeast as well. Just one more thing, market-based. So we have talked about inflation expectations with survey-based inflation expectations rising in some surveys, but the market-based inflation expectations staying stagnant and kind of well anchored, as Powell put in the last conference. But now, market-based inflation expectations continue to rise and are now at their highest levels since March 2023. 5-year break-even at 2.64%. Quote, we will not allow inflation expectations to drift upward, Jerome Powell after cutting 100 basis points last year. So that's not a good development for companies with high PE ratios, such as Tesla and Palantir and many others. All right, on that note, we're going to end the space. Thank you very much, everybody. I will chat with you all next time. The recording is available on YouTube and X, and I highly recommend listening to it from the beginning and leave me your thoughts on the topics discussed in comments below the YouTube video or reply to the space. Thank you very much, and I'll chat with you all next time. Take care.